Hello again, I am Blunty. The marketing push for the westernized version of Blue Protocol has stirred from its cold slumber and may indicate we're in the warm-up phase for gathering interest, hype, and players for a set of closed beta tests, open beta tests, and then towards proper launch. And we're getting some fairly honest answers about how Amazon games are approaching censorship versus the original Japanese version and monetization as they attempt to make both of these more, in their eyes, more palatable for Western audiences. This, as you might imagine, if you've ever met and spoken to an anime fan, is never going to go over well, no matter what they say. Because censorship based on cultural values that's a bit of a hot button topic. And oh, you bet the answers we got today are going to cause arguments. Loud ones. Now, I personally dropped right off the hype train for Blue Protocol back when it was announced, just before the Japanese release, that the Amazon Games published version for the West was being delayed significantly. In fact, now we have to wait till sometime in 2024. When that announcement came, I'd already been tracking the game for some time now. I'd started making content and videos about it. I was getting pretty excited that there wouldn't be a huge gap between Japanese and Western release, but when that announcement came, oh my god, did it let the air out of my tires and suck the wind out of my sails. It slaughtered the momentum of hype for me. So I've not kept a close eye on what's going on with the Japanese version much either, waiting instead for a reason to be interested again, a reason to invest my time and attention again. And I know I'm not alone in this, so shout out in the down below how you feel. So, this resurrection of the Western marketing came with the silence breaking on official social media accounts for the Amazon Games published and managed version of Blue Protocol. A new trailer dropped, focused mainly on showing off the different weapon classes, and frankly, it's a bit of a banger. They've done the thing where they sync the music pops to the weapon hits, which I don't know about you, but I always find oddly satisfying. And alongside this trailer drop, some Western outlets who were invited for a hands-on preview of Blue Protocol's Western version, which happened about a month ago or so, today have been let off the leash of whatever non-disclosure agreement they signed and whatever embargo they agreed to, and are now permitted to publish their experiences, nicely timed for the marketing team when they drop the new trailer and all this coverage starts coming out on all these outlets all at once. Pretty standard video game marketing stuff. So, while most outlets have published fairly nothing articles, frankly, with very short and uninteresting first impressions kind of stuff, very dry, very standard, written while half asleep, I'm sure, honestly, they're barely worth reading if you've kept up on the game at all. There is nothing for you there. Pretty disappointing stuff, if I'm completely honest with you. But Blue Protocol DB, or Blue Protocol Database, a largely fact-based fan-run site hoping to be the main touchstone for the player base going forward, has published a proper interview with Amazon Games franchise lead Mike Zadoronyi, whose name I'm only guessing at the proper pronunciation of. I hope I'm saying it right. It's Mike, right? Mike? That's how you say that? But, in what was a rather pleasant surprise, to be frank, Mike was pretty open about the topics of censorship and monetization, and the delays and timings of the Western Blue Protocol adaptations. So, let's run through some of those answers and have a little chat, shall we? Blue Protocol DB start off immediately with the topic at hand that we all want to talk about and have a chat about and know about and argue about. Right off the bat, they ask them about censorship. Censorship is a huge topic in the West. Can you confirm if elements of the game will be changed in Blue Protocol to fit the Western scene? If yes, may you please expand on this subject? Mike's response? So, I'll talk at a high level in terms of the goals, what we are trying to accomplish in this, and then we'll go back down to specifics. I think censorship comes in different ways, and that level of censorship is usually where we find disagreements within the community. Mike, I think you're going to discover some people just don't like censorship at all. Never mind levels, never mind ways. Some people just consider any change you make from the Japanese version to a Western version as censorship, and that's bad. Always bad. So, warm up for that one, Mike. Anyway, he continues. Generally speaking, when we're talking about censorship of Blue Protocol, we want to bring Shimuka-san's vision. That's one of the Bando Namco guys that would, running the game. His vision for the game and for the Western players. However, there are layers we have to think about from a cultural, legal, and regulatory perspective. We want the content and events to be the same one-on-one. When we talk about changes, we are looking at a perspective from bringing the game to as many people as possible. We are targeting a T rating since it is an anime game. Now, let's stop there. It is a misconception on behalf of, well, frankly, it's usually Americans, but in the Western audience in general. And this is a very long hangover from the earliest days of westernized anime adaptations. Seeing anime and anime-style things as for children, because they're cartoons, and in the West, cartoons have almost always been targeted at children. I mean, over the last couple of decades, that's lessened a bit. We have more and more adult-themed and adult-targeted cartoons. But in general, that cultural hangover of, oh, it's animated, it must be for kids, has infested anime adaptations, and the ignorance and arrogance of anime adaptations. I mean, we can go all the way back to some of the changes they made in G-Force, for example, or Star Blazers, or we can talk about Pokemon and the jelly donuts. I mean, this goes all the way back and just underestimating Western audiences and just being really culturally ignorant. And it is a very big topic that has been discussed in anime circles for, well, literally like 4 or 5 decades. So it's really disappointing to see people from Amazon Games still holding this cultural ignorance in hand that anything anime has to be targeted as teens and children and can't have anything remotely mature in it. But back to the interview answer. The general changes we are looking at is how do we make that approach to this game? A change for us in the West, specifically in the character creation menu. The female characters will no longer have the physics shake button available. These are the types of changes that are culturally accepted in Japan and which they do in their titles. However, in the West it can be uncomfortable for our players, and that's where we will step in and say, hey, can we make a slight change for this? In Amazon Games' eyes, in the Western eyes, in their opinion, boobs don't move. The big fatty things on the chests of quite a lot of women, they don't move with physics, apparently. That's offensive in the West to see a boob move with physics. And look, I get it. Some Japanese games go to hilarious extremes with the boob physics. And this also goes a very long way back in gaming history. We can talk about a certain volleyball spin-off game from a certain fighting series, if you like, which had some of the most hilarious early hyper-jiggle boob physics, if you like. But I think this is a bit silly, to be honest. Now, sure, removing a button specifically in the character creator that does nothing but makes the boobs jiggle, sure, I can see that as being a little bit silly and getting rid of that just to avoid having the conversation around it, because it will only lead to sort of fake outrage articles and whatnots, and look at what they're showing to our children. They're showing our children physics. Look out, they're showing the children. It's probably best to avoid it. I get why they're doing this, but are boob physics still going to be like in the regular animations? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. The interview answer only mentions the character creator. One of the other changes that we have talked about, which players have already seen, is about making some changes to the outfits of the children characters to make some outfits less revealing. Now, this is something that originally sparked the censorship debate. A change in someone data mined the original benchmarking client from Japan and found 2 different versions of one particular outfit that belonged to one small NPC. And there was I've made a video about this as well in the past, but it was obviously a child NPC, and the outfit went from relatively revealing to slightly less revealing, and people lost their minds over that, which is pretty creepy to worry about how much skin you can see on a child NPC. And there are people out there going, oh, small women exist. It might not be a child. It was obviously a child, guys. Anyway, let's continue with the answer. These things are not necessarily going to detract from the gameplay experience or from the story that is going on, but generally speaking will make it so when parents or friends are playing with other teens that they're not necessarily going to be pulled out of the environment or the game's perspective. That is a very silly answer to that question. Look, I get it. Making the outfits for children or child-presenting style characters less revealing, less provocative maybe, is just a safe way to go, again, to avoid any chance of fake outrage and you know, hate bait articles, because people will grab hold of the stuff and try to make a big deal out of it. So we've come to a point where you know, publishers like Amazon Games just going, you know what, how about we just avoid having that discussion and we'll just make her pants a bit longer. That you know, we'll cover up the shoulders. And then we don't have to have that conversation. But it is rather silly because, well, frankly, you can walk down the street and, you know, you can see an 8-year-old girl wearing a tank top where you can see her shoulders, and you can see, you know, some little dude with sports shorts on that, you know, cover only a quarter of his thighs or something. It's not sexually provocative unless you already consider children to be, what shall we say here, exciting to you. The rest of us who just look at children and see children don't really focus on their outfits that much. It's really, really concerning and really, really creepy when people get really obsessed about how much skin they can see on a child in fear that it might be too provocative. That's a whole discussion there, and you can have that in the down below. I just don't have the headspace for that discussion right now. It gets very creepy very quickly, and the people who scream very, very passionately about the defense of being able to see childlike characters in more revealing costumes, I don't want to be on that side of the fence, quite frankly. So while in general, I think this form of censorship is a bit silly, I do understand why it's there, and I'm not going to die on that hill. But I will say it is very strange for that to be coming from the American culture, which still has child beauty pageants. Now here, though, is a really interesting bit of censorship that wasn't mentioned in the interview answer. This is an editor's note from Blue Protocol. This wasn't part of their interview. This is something they've added as they're editing the interview. In our gameplay demo available below, you may notice that there are only 2 body presets for players to toggle, whereas in the Japanese client, there is a third, small body size present. We can only assume that changing the body preset would be to avoid censoring current and future revealing outfits. Censorship is also tied into the teen rating and regional restrictions. It may come down to a would you rather scenario. That's kind of like what I was saying there. Would you want less censorship or fewer regions available for players, or more censorship meaning more regions available to players? So yeah, it seems like the Blue Protocol, whoever edited this article, is kind of on the same wavelength as I am with this. It's not a hill worth dying on, but it is slightly silly. So let's talk about removal of the small body type. This is where I start drawing a line, because small people do exist. And it is true in the character creator, at least the one I tried in the benchmark tool. You could make a small character. You could reduce their other secondary aspects to make them look a bit more childlike, and if you're playing that more childlike presenting character in the game and one of the cosmetic outfits you get is rather revealing, that could again be something that someone takes a screenshot of and tries to do some fake outrage about. But it is a genuine fact, and I have friends in real life that fall into this category. Some people are just built small, and in silhouettes might present as less mature physically than they actually are in reality. I don't know. I'm a lot more fuzzy on my opinion on this particular piece of censorship than I am about, putting a slightly larger shirt on a childlike NPC. As far as timing goes, when we're talking about, dates for the closed beta test or the open beta test or the global release or anything like that, Mike doesn't have anything secure or solid to say. He says, unfortunately, not at the moment. Where we are now is we actually have an internal playtest coming up to test the scale of the servers and to make sure we have have data running through the pipe. So this is not a closed beta test or anything. This is just something they're doing internally just to make sure the bones of their server structure is going to work the way they expect it to work. So it continues, once we passed internal playtests, the CBT closed beta test is right around the corner, and that's our next big step. So we're not far off, but I cannot commit to a date yet because we basically need to make sure we got the build locked down. Once that is complete, we'll be going public and start to make sure people know when the CBT is. We'll also be picking up those last-minute stragglers who did not yet sign up on our official website. So that's what's happening right now. The marketing push has begun with the intention of starting to push people into making sure they've got signed up for an account. They've ticked the little box that says, hey, send me the newsletter, so they can keep a little flood of interested players happening with a little trickle of news and keep them engaged until the closed beta test and open beta test and launch can come down. That's what all this marketing is about. This is about building that momentum and starting to build a player base ready to test out the game and hopefully play the game when it launches. So the fact that all of this is happening now is an indication that might not be too far away. My guess, well, they're probably not going to do September because, well, there's some other games happening in September that might have people's attention. But maybe October, maybe November, somewhere floating around there. We can cross our fingers and hope on that. But yeah, like Mike says, it will depend broadly on how their internal tests go. If, the way they've set up the server works the way they expect, so they can probably do it sooner. If not, they have some things to fix and adjust and play with, and then they'll have to do it later. That's why they can't lock down a time yet, because, well, they literally don't know if they can pull the trigger on a closed beta test yet. So that makes perfect sense to me. Now, on the subject of monetization and pay to win and gacha and all that, here's what Mike had to say. Blue Protocol Database asks, I know for instance that Lost Ark, that Amazon Games made specific changes that differed from the Korean version that made it less pay to win. How will the monetization system differ from Japan in the Western version of Blue Protocol? And Mike says, there are some things we are talking to Bandai Namco about. The one thing we mention right now, since a lot of it is visible with the Japanese version, we are bringing the Battle Pass system over, also known as the Season Pass. That is going to be very similar. We are also doing Founders Packs for the Western release. Sigh. Similar to what they have done for Lost Ark. I fucking Founders Pack, man. No. Founders Packs are so gross, man. A way to make people pay for a free-to-play game before launch. It's just, no, piss off with that. Also, we are bringing over the gacha box, which we are calling the Capsulator. A rose banning of the name is still gacha, mate. You can call it whatever you like, it's a gacha box. And in fact, Bandai Namco have a specific spelling of gacha that they have trademarked. There is the generic gacha, and then there is the Bandai Namco specific gacha. But whatever, call it the Capsulator if you think that will soften the concept for Western audiences. It's a loot box. It's a loot box. We all know it's a loot box. It's a blind box. It's gacha. It's gambling. It's random. But Mike goes on. The one thing that we're adding specifically for the Western version is that there will be a cap. So after X number of purchases, you are guaranteed a box with a top rank item in there. It's not going to be like you're completely betting on random odds to get that item you want. Not completely. I guess not legally speaking, you can call it not gambling when the regulatory bodies come after you because you put a cap on there. So, it's technically not gambling. Yeah, I see right through you, Mike. You're not doing this for our benefit. You're doing this for your benefit. So you don't have to put gambling on the rating system of your game. And here's a fun fact that I didn't know about because, again, I have been keeping a close eye on the Japanese version since I, dropped off the hype train after the announcement of the delay. But apparently, that's not something Amazon Games are doing. That's something that exists in the Japanese version. This interview was conducted before the reveal of the Japanese PT system. That's what these things are called, by the way, PT systems, where the game goes, you've spent so much money, we're going to guarantee you a high-level drop in your next gacha. It's pretty common in games, and again, it's not done for the benefit of the players, it's done for the benefit of regulatory reasons, so it's not, technically, legally considered gambling. In any case, the Blue Protocol Database conjecture that the Western version might receive a different PT system. I don't know where that's coming from. He's got no reason to believe that it will be different. Nothing about what we know about this suggests that. That's just a guess or a hope or copium. I don't know, but whatever. One final thing from this interview I want to cover, and by the way, I'm not talking about everything in this interview. I'll link it in the down below for you. There are many questions I didn't specifically bounce over here. But yeah, that's all I wanted to bounce across and have a little chat about there. I'll link the full interview in the down below, which also has a video on some recorded Western client gameplay showcase thing, which I actually haven't watched yet. I just saw this interview and I went, I have some things to say about the interview, so I'm going to do that. So yeah, I'm going to finish up recording. I'm going to edit this video, throw it up, and then I'm going to watch that gameplay video. Yeah, of course, I'll link that in the down below for you as well. Thanks for watching. I am Bloody. Thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there, and I will catch you next time.